me as I keep saying bail. Think about the food bills. This week, we opened on Rosemary, contemplating something a lot more Precure characters should. Why were the villains only specifically targeting this little town, especially when they know the team of superheroines lived in it? Well, okay, maybe this will lead to some interesting little developments, like maybe there's some deeper lore reason why this town is so special and—
Nope.
I almost forgot, the show has no real stakes other than this plate full of calories. However, there was one thing that wasn't full at all. Wait, if you've been eating out that much, how can you still be so skinny? Dude, have you been making good friends with your uvula recently? But yeah, because the adult of this team was incredibly irresponsible with his finances, he was flat broke. Fortunately, the teenage girls were here to help him by suggesting he compete in a food stall competition where the grand prize were a bunch of food coupons, which they never really established how much they would discount. I guess it was implied that they provide free meals, but even then, dude, it might not be a wise investment when you still have to buy the ingredients for the competition. By the way, the writer of this episode was a newbie named Yuki Tanahata, not Yabata like ANN originally reported. Yeah, y'all can try and cover up your shoddy reporting, but we all know you're just as bad as Crunchyroll. But yeah, just looking at this person's credits, it's clear they're still very green, so I'll give them a little leeway for a not entirely well thought out plot. Besides, the show as a whole has much bigger issues that we'll get to in just a bit. Anyway, they tried to brainstorm what sort of food they should make for the competition, and at first couldn't come to a consensus.
おばあちゃん言ってた。料理の味を決めるのは下準備と手際の良さ。戦闘も同じだ。
Thus, they went with a dish that, at least conceptually, combined all four of their suggestions, yakisoba. Again, I'd like to point out, this wouldn't be a cheap dish to make, and apparently they'd also have some competition, but hey, gotta have some kind of conflict for this show, no matter how mundane. We certainly weren't going to get it from the villains of this show, as we cover to the lair of the bundles, minus one best boy.
ナルシストルーはもともと捨て駒。放っておいてよいかと。
Hold it in, hold it in, hold it in. Okay, I'm good. Take that back, you— Okay, but seriously, what are these jabronis even going on about at this point? Goldats congratulated Secretary for infiltrating Cook Kingdom in the last episode, even though she really didn't accomplish anything, and apparently off-screen they lost a bunch of full delicious stones to a time-space displacement?
Not scientifically possible!
Like, was that important in some way? And why are you all acting like you're in a good spot, especially without Narcissus? At least he successfully made a lot of the bundle's arsenal, meanwhile you two, on top of being boring as all hell, have accomplished nothing.
Bundaru! Bundaru!
So alone. So alone!
I'm being absolutely serious when I say Narcissus was holding these villains up and in turn a lot of the show's conflict. Anyway, back with our heroines, they had set up shop, and I guess Rosemary managed to get financing by mooching off of his friends, who even produced a freaking commercial for his little food stall. Honestly, doing this ahead of a competition feels like cheating, but to be fair, this was also a well-animated and fun little parody of Yakuza film trailers, so I'll give it a pass, as I'm sure they won't try to pull any more of this sort of BS later. And they met their aforementioned competition in the form of a couple of yakisoba makers. Well, there goes my appetite. Still, cringe aside, they did provide an interesting little tale about how Yui's grandmother managed to hook them up with an alleged jinx that tied people together through yakisoba. It was cute and did give us some much needed insight into what sort of person Granny was and how she connected people through their appreciation of food. That said, I do have one question. Couldn't they just have had Yui recount this story? Yeah, while Yui knew they were acquaintances of her grandmother, for whatever reason, she didn't know what she had done for them. Not to mention, this little tale took place 5 years prior to the show. Don't you think that would have led to a nice emotional moment for Yui as she recollected one of the last good things her grandmother did before she passed away? But nope, apparently everyone else got to talk about Granny's accomplishments while Yui only got to quote some platitudes. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense for these characters to recount their own tales, it's just that Yui desperately needs to have her own character developed, and having her emotionally recount memories of her grandmother would be an effective way of doing that, rather than just continuing to steal Tendo's gimmick. Anyway, the competition was on, and while they had a good start, the more experienced stall understandably had the advantage of seasoned customers. Thus, our heroines decide to pull out the big guns, or rather, a freaking helicopter. Remember kids, if you ever want to get ahead in life, just use money, and don't give a crap about the environment. That's what the Precure teach ya. Yeah, again, I'm not thrilled when our protagonists are pulling moves that are usually done by rich heels who utilize their infinite bank accounts to gain unfair advantages over the underdogs. I think it would have been enough if they just used Ron's social following and Amine's decoration skills, as those are established traits of theirs. Oh, thank God, it's been a while. Anyway, as it turned out, I was wrong about Spiritor returning this week, not complaining mind you, as I figured Secretor's lack of a capture animation meant that she would just be a one-off deal. But no, we just had to wait an extra week, so is it on par with her cohorts or at least better than her summoning animation? Nope, she still has the absolute worst and laziest villain animations. Which, to be fair, is kind of appropriate for the character. To be fair, she did have probably the most powerful side effect of the bundles, as not only did she erase memories of the captured food, she also erased its very existence. Yeah, that's actually really threatening and worthy of, likely, the penultimate boss of the series. I just wish it was associated with a more interesting character is all. Anyway, the resulting fight was actually quite exciting for the first half with some really good animation for the show. Meanwhile, the second half was mostly them getting out of a literal bind, but it also did provide a pretty awesome moment for Rosemary, who helped them escape as thanks for helping him through his poor financial choices. No, and Takumi was just kind of there to remind us that he's supposed to be important, I guess. And as for the competition... So, like, did they split the coupons, or did they both just get the original amount? Well, either way, I'd say the couple deserved to win by DQ, but that's just me. Later, our protagonists enjoyed some of their leftover noodles, and only then recalled Granny's jinx. And the episode ended with poor Takumi getting totally cucked. Why do you all have to do both my boys dirty? This was a pretty good episode, as at the very least, they are starting to build a couple of characters. I wouldn't really say they're developing characters like Rosemary or Yui's grandmother, but more just reaffirming their established characteristics, which isn't a bad thing, and does make us appreciate them a little more. That said, other characters, most notably our antagonists, continue to have absolutely no substance to them. I mean, it's a perfectly good episode on its own, but the persistent lack of any actual conflict is really starting to eat away at me. Again, I can give you a little leeway to this episode, as the writer is not only new to this franchise, but also to writing in general. There's certainly clunkiness here, like the conflict feeling a little forced, and a protagonist using unfair tactics, but for the tone of the show, it's not the worst thing that could happen. And it was kinda made up for thanks to some nice scenes for Rosemary and Yui's grandmother. In the case of the former, while him being really bad with his finances was eye-rolling, he still came off as a likable character, and pretty much led this team as someone wasn't exactly pulling her weight. We didn't really learn anything new about Rosemary's character, but at least he got a nice moment to shine. In the case of the latter, we got some much appreciated establishment of Yui's granny's personality and wisdom. Honestly, I think she just made up that yakisoba jinx, but it still went to show how she views food as a means of forming bonds with others, which has been a major theme for the show. It helped to flesh out her character a lot more than her granddaughter. Yeah, while Yui understandably wasn't the focus of this episode, I do have to point out how both our main lead and antagonist have really been shortchanged in terms of their development and build. Again, I'm just saying, this was a missed opportunity to give Yui some actual agency in the show by recounting memories of her grandmother and connecting more with someone who is very important to her life. Then again, judging by how little she values Takumi, who probably could have helped at your little stall, I wonder if she even knows what the word precious means. Meanwhile, in spite of Secretary having the most threatening power so far, I would actually say the villains are now at their weakest in terms of personality and presence. Secretary, without someone like Narcissus to work off of, is just an unengaged villainess who's hard to get invested in. Meanwhile, Godots is just Godots. We don't really know what his endgame is, or how much of a threat he poses when he's been absent from much of the show. Thus, while this episode overall was pretty good on its own, highlighting two very underutilized characters, I can't say I'm all that engaged in the show's overarching conflict when both our lead and antagonist are unengaging. Next week is the long-awaited Yui focus episode, and considering it's going to be another take on the Prince and the Pauper, I really don't expect that much at this point. If you haven't seen it yet, understandable since it is on our channel, we actually managed to finish up the final part of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Openings ranking video. It was a fun little video series to start up the second channel on that we hope to add to with some other card game anime in the near future. For now though, we're going to be switching back to this channel and focusing on making an intro video for the next Magical Girl anime we'll cover after PPGZ. It's one that's kind of been a long time coming, and something that kind of proves that Toei needs a little more competition these days for Magical Girls. Look forward to it, and until then though, farewell for now my friends, and oh yeah, it's October, isn't it? I should probably get a costume. Yeah, this'll do.